Assalamu alaikum.
The question we're going to be addressing today, the question of God, is an interesting question. It's something that's been discussed for centuries, since time immemorial. Theists and atheists discuss this topic back and forth, arguments are shared, arguments for and against the existence of God, and so on and so forth, right? But the way I want to approach the discussion today is I want to change the narrative, right? What I want to share is my paradigm, the Islamic paradigm, right? And from the Islamic perspective, what I want us to realize is that the question of God is not a question. The question of God is not a question. God, Allah, is a reality. Allah is a necessary truth. Allah is axiomatic. The belief in Allah is foundational, it's innate. It's a part of our nature, right? And denying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, denying God is the equivalent of denying ourselves and our very existence. Now you may be thinking, why am I saying this? From the perspective of, if you like, Western philosophy, the term that's used is basic beliefs, right? This foundational belief is coined as what's called basic beliefs, right? And we have several basic beliefs. Now I'm going to point out one or two, one being that the real world is the real world. Now this is a foundational basic belief, it's an axiomatic belief. And science, the enterprise of science, is based and pegged on this belief itself. The belief that the real world is the real world. Science depends on this, although you cannot empirically validate this claim or belief. Right? Think about this for a second. Try to prove that you're here right now, that you exist, that our surroundings exist. Think about this for a second. Is that real? Now some of you may say, well, the chair I'm sitting on, I can feel the chair I'm sitting on. Some of you may say, well, you know, I can see the auditorium. I can see you standing here talking to me. Some of you may say, well, I can feel my hands and see my hands. But how do you know that what you see and what you feel and what you experience right now is actually real? How do you know it's real? How do you know that you're not just a brain in a vat on a distant planet somewhere and aliens are sticking probes into your brain making you feel like you're here right now? How do you know you're not in a matrix? Think about this. See, the reality is we don't know. We won't know, but the reality is we don't accept these distorted beliefs. We accept that the real world is the real world. We accept that we're here right now. We accept that we're real. And the reason we do this is because it's foundational. It's not arbitrary. It's foundational. It's basic. We need to accept this to move on and progress. And in the same way, what I'm positing is the belief in God is also a foundational belief. It's a basic belief. And the equivalent of denying God is the equivalent of denying that the real world is the real world and that we exist. And this belief, again, is not arbitrary. This belief is supported first and foremost by the Islamic tradition. And in Islam, we have the concept of what's called the fitrah, this innate disposition that Allah has created us upon. This innate knowing. We know Allah exists. We know, and we have this innate yearning to worship the divine as well. I mean, all we have to do is look into societies, look into history, civilizations, communities. There have never been entire civilizations or groups of people who have denied the Creator. All civilizations have worshipped the divine, worshipped the supernatural reality. All civilizations throughout history. And what's fascinating is that the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, over 1400 years ago, said that every child is born on the fitrah. The fitrah, as mentioned before, this innate disposition to recognize Allah and this innate yearning to worship Him. And this is further supported in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so direct your faces towards the religion, incline to truth, adhere to the fitrah of Allah which He has created all people on. Allah has created every single human being on the fitrah. And this is further supported by modern scientific research, empirical data. You have the likes of Justin O'Barrett, who's a developmental scientist and who studied children. He's written several books. In one of such books, in The Born Believers, he's clearly stated that children are born believers of what I call natural religion. We have the likes of Olivera Petrovich, who's also stated the possibility that some religious beliefs are universal, e.g. basic belief in a non-anthropomorphic God as creator of the natural world seems to have a strong empirical foundation, stronger empirical foundation than could be inferred from religious texts. Now this is a scientist. She's citing empirical data, she's citing studies that she's conducted herself, and what she's showing is that human beings naturally and rapidly develop the belief in a supreme being, in intelligence. Children naturally and rapidly develop the belief in a creator, in supernatural agencies. And she said that this is more strongly supported empirically than it is through religious text. But obviously, if she had studied the Islamic tradition, she would have been aware that this concept of the fitrah, this innate belief in Allah, is profound. It's throughout the text. You can't deny this is embedded within the Islamic tradition. Hence, to sum up what I'm saying, basically, is that we believe in Allah first and foremost because it's a part of our fitrah, it's innate. And we're completely justified in believing this. It's a completely rational belief, in the same way believing that the real world is the real world. Now, some people may say, well, interesting, you postulate a basic belief, now let me do the same. Let's bring in the Cookie Monster. Or let's say a pink purple baboon created everything, right? Someone may say this, but what we need to realize is that basic beliefs aren't just any random beliefs they can postulate. A basic belief, one, is a foundational belief that other beliefs are based upon. But secondly, a basic belief is also a belief that doesn't require any information transfer. Now, what do I mean? Let's take a hypothetical scenario. Let's take a group of children, and imagine you put a group of children on a desert island. Now, they will naturally grow up believing that the world around them is real. It exists. The sand is real, the sea is real, the air is real, the trees are real, the sky is real, and so on. They will also naturally and rapidly grow up believing, or they'll formulate this belief that there are supernatural causal agencies. There is a creator that's created everything and is running and governing everything. But they won't naturally and rapidly develop the belief in a Cookie Monster or a pink purple baboon. These beliefs will require information transfer. They will require us to understand some things about biscuits, some things about desserts, some things about animals. And these are concepts we will need to know, we need to understand before we can postulate such concepts. But the belief in God and the belief in the real world being the real world, these are innate foundational beliefs. They don't require information transfer. Now, some people may say, well, fine, there was loads of other beliefs in the past, basic beliefs, such as the earth is flat. The earth is flat. This was a well-known basic belief that people held. But along came science eventually. We had empirical data which showed that the earth is not flat, it's actually spherical. Hence, we let go of the belief. Fine. And this is the thing about basic beliefs. If you can provide empirical data against the existence of God, or believing that God is innate in the foundational belief, then we can relook or revisit the basic belief and question it. But the irony is that the belief in God is a metaphysical reality beyond the physical. And science is limited to what's physically observable. And we have a problem here. Therefore, science can never directly prove or disprove the existence of God. The question of God is beyond the scope of science. All science can do, all we can do with the scientific method is infer based on the observations that we have as to which way does science point. Does it point towards God? Or does it point towards denying God, if you like? Or point towards naturalism? This is all science can do. Science can never directly prove or disprove the notion of God. Hence, the basic belief that is God can never be challenged from an empirical perspective. And I really wanted to lay down this foundation first, because we seem to have developed this notion that we need to reason to God's existence, which is completely flawed. We don't believe in God because we can reason to God's existence. All reasoning and rationality does, or the purpose it serves, is it helps to trigger the fitrah, to trigger this innate disposition within us, amongst those in who it's become clouded or dispersed. And this is what we need to realize. And in this light, I want to continue tonight understanding this and laying down the foundations. And what I want to do today is I want us all to use foundational basic reasoning, what I call functional reasoning, right? I can entertain you with syllogisms, deductive arguments, and so on, right? They may be very interesting, a bit of intellectual chess every now and then is not bad for anyone. But the reality is, when it comes to truth, truth has to be something all of us can understand. It has to appeal to the masses. I mean, how many people understand complex syllogisms or deductive arguments? The reality is not many. And truth has to be universal. Otherwise, what is truth which only 2% of the populace understand? It's irrelevant. And I want us to use the reasoning which we use throughout our daily lives, day to day, from when we wake up in the morning, to brushing our teeth, to taking our kids to school, to going to work, returning home, having a dinner and going to bed. The basic reasoning that we use throughout our lives which serves us well. Why is it when it comes to the question of God that we start to employ this special super criteria? We don't need complex arguments when it comes to God. Our simple functional reasoning serves us well, and it does the job. And I want us to employ that today, because I'm going to discuss a few realities. And what I want us to do is question these realities and using functional basic reasoning, ask the question, what best explains these realities? God or naturalism? Or atheism, if you like.